Hello Internet, it's Alistair at Lazarus Training here. We're just doing a quick video for you about contents of first aid kits. Reason being is that Claire and I are off to ADEX in Brussels later this week, and in advance of that we've been talking to a variety of our contacts that work in the NGO and aid sector, and just in general chatting to some of them. A question came up that frequently comes up, and it was to do with what first aid kit should people carry when they're going into these kind of settings, and what would we recommend. Well, we've done some stuff in the past of this nature to do with media, to do with police. We've even done what we called the desert island discs of first aid kits, so that you could only have a very limited bit of equipment. I think it was 5 bits we suggested, and in fact there's some YouTube videos of that on our channel if you have a little prowl around on there after this video. But in the next few minutes I'm going to show you a kit that we like and recommend as an individual first aid kit, which would be appropriate for someone working in the aid sector. Partly because it's quite small, so you can carry it around with you rather than leaving it back in the accommodation or in your vehicle, and because it's quite small, it comes with quite a small budget as well, because we're very conscious that budget is always important in these sectors. So let's have a look at the kit. Here we've got a regular basic first aid kit bag. When I open it up, we haven't got tons of items in here, but we can see we've got quite a good selection. Now, any of you that have done a hostile environments course, or like a first aid in hostile or remote locations type of course, this stuff will seem very, very familiar. I'm going to go through it in structure as well, and that structure should seem quite familiar. And the priority, now that I've got my hands in the bag, is we're going to look at things for catastrophic bleeding. Now, working in the aid sector, we're very keen that things have more than one use and that they offer good value for money. But there's one thing that we can't really replace too much or expect too many other jobs from, and that's the tourniquet. Now, this is one of the most popular types of tourniquet around in the world. It's the combat application tourniquet. It's the one that we use in all our kits, and this kit indeed has actually come back from my recent travels, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and I'm off to Malaysia again in a few weeks' time. So this is the kit I take with me to those settings. So a tourniquet to deal with any massive catastrophic bleeds from the arms and legs. If it's not on the arm or leg, well, we can't use a tourniquet perhaps, so we've got Clotting Agents here. Now, we use Celox gauze, is our favourite of the moment. It just so happens this kit has got the roller version of it, but there is also a flat pack version, Z-fold, and some of our kits have got that in instead. There is some medical debate about whether it's the clotting agent that does all the magic word, or if it's the or if it's the ramming the dressing into the wound. So just to cover all bases, we have a small bit of packing here. It's just regular gauze that you could use to pack out a wound, possibly sort of multiple wounds, so we'll put those there. So if that's my sort of catastrophic bleeding side of things, I guess the next stepping stone we would move to would be Airway. Now, we're big fans of keeping things simple in our training, and the only Airway kind of intervention perhaps that we have in here are these here, the nasopharyngeal tubes, the little ones that go into the nose, as the name would suggest. They're in there at the moment, a bit of a luxury item probably, if I had to be honest about the kit. They do not create an airway, they can't maintain an airway by themselves, they just assist. That's why we sometimes call them adjuncts. They just, because of the passageway, perhaps give you a better flow of air through the person's airway, and are no replacement for decent sort of manual methods or decent positioning of the casualty, i.e. perhaps on their side or maybe even almost face down. Because they're in there, we've also got a little tube of lubricant there as well. So after airway, the next stepping stone is breathing, and the main item we've got in here to do with breathing is a dressing, the Nightingale dressing, an occlusive dressing, and it's in there perhaps to seal the chest wound. That's its main use, but it can be cut up, and you can see it can be folded for storage, which we think is a particularly useful idea, and it can be used on all sorts of other wounds as well. And in fact, on a recent trip to Nigeria, I had a problem in my wrist. I seemed to have some sort of allergic reaction to the Fitbit that I was wearing at the time. Not Fitbit's fault, I must say that right here and now, probably something weird to do with my skin and the humidity. But a small bit of this covered the wound, kept it nice and clean, and no problems with infection. So Nightingale dressings, very good, but it's in here to do with breathing. So after breathing, perhaps move on to circulation. We need to check people over for injuries, so we've got a decent pair of scissors in here, tough cut scissors, cut through clothing. Any of you that have done training with us, first aid courses, that type of thing, will know about the best first aid is naked first aid. So there, so we can cut the clothing off. And then we've got a decent dressing here. And our favourite at the moment is the Olay's dressing, modular. So a big dressing in there, more packing, a bit of plastic for covering exposed wounds, perhaps gut wounds, or even perhaps even try to seal a chest. but it's a decent dressing, about £5–6 ago, covers a whole bunch of different things. So from there, from C for circulation, we might go into other assessments and checking of a casualty. Well, maybe we end up trying to splint any large wounds or any fractures, and this is inspired by, I think might be the way to describe it, sand splints, which are a bit of aluminium covered in plastic, and this is someone's version of it, taking inspiration from that. Very useful for protecting items inside the kit. If you've got a bigger kit, you can put them around the outside to provide some protection. They're simply limited by your imagination. And when it comes to imagination of these, people have done all sorts. Neck collars, arms and so on. But even using one of those and the combat application tourniquet, we can perhaps improvise a pelvic binder. Now, if we're talking about improvising, there's very few problems in the world that can't be solved by the application of some gaffer tape, or in this case Gorilla Tape, if you're more familiar with that as a title. We can now see that bit of the bag's empty. And the only thing that's left in here is one of these, a space blanket. Now, they're in first aid kits to help keep people warm. The idea is you sort of wrap it around them and it will miraculously keep them warm. In reality, it will reflect heat that they're losing, so you've got to get it on them while they're still warm. But again, it can have some other uses. We've looked at ways to improvise pelvic binders with these, and perhaps, bearing in mind the other contents of this kit, more usefully, we've even managed to make some stretchers out of these in some cases. It depends exactly on the size of the person. And then there's only one other bit that I've missed out so far, and that is a decent pen. Other brands are available, but Sharpies are our favourites, right on pretty much everything and anything, including political skin. We tell the people that do our first aid in remote areas, hostile areas and so on training, that if you don't write it down, it didn't happen, because we need to get some decent notes made about what's happened to the casualty, so that we can hand them over to the medical staff with some accurate and useful information, and also so that we can kind of collate stuff for reporting back within organisations. All important features. So there you go, there's an individual first aid kit that we think is suitable for many different sectors, but we've got particularly an eye towards the aid worker sector, the NGO sector, as we're off to ADEX later this week, as mentioned. Now, we have done some other videos, that Desert Island discs of 5 items, that's on the YouTube channel. We looked at some other first aid kits. We've looked at some improvisation as well for someone that doesn't have any budget to provide first aid kits to their staff. So perhaps have a little roll around on our YouTube channel and you'll find much of that content. Or failing that, stick a comment in the thing below, any questions, queries or concerns, and we'll do everything we can to address those for you. But for the moment, thanks for watching, and if you are at ADEX later this week, we look forward to seeing you there. If not, just drop a comment and we can get in touch via the YouTube channel. Anyway, look forward to hearing from you. See you soon. Bye then.